Already hospital facilities have begun to crack under the strain.
Major cities in all parts of the country, New York, Los Angeles, report plague victims falling dead in the streets, in their homes, at their work.
Colorado Channel, this is a Class 1 emergency. All civilian traffic is barred from streets and highways. Stay in your homes. Stay in your homes. Those found without specific military orders are subject to summary execution. Stay in your homes. Repeat, Colorado Channel, this is a Class 1 emergency. All civilian traffic is barred from streets and highways.
Hi everyone, welcome to the first episode of my new podcast, How I Spent My Pandemic. This is John 7, and the podcast is about exactly what the title says. During this pandemic, I've wondered how people get through it. I know some people spend their days working at home, some people spend their days helping their kids get through it. Some people are probably a little lost, some people are discovering new aspects of themselves. So I do sincerely wonder that. And I also wonder how the pandemic has changed what you expected out of your life, what course you were on, how you might have had to alter that course and change plans. As I was thinking about that stuff, I realized that one of the remarkable things about the pandemic is how across the board it's put all sorts of people in that position. It seems to me that whether you're a real serious, careful quarantiner type, or whether you're one of those cantankerous anti-masker types, the one thing you have in common is that this pandemic has really had an effect on how you're living your life. It's created a disruption on an everyday basis, and you can't escape it, regardless of your political feelings. That's something I wanted to find out about. So in doing so, I'll be interviewing different people in this show. Some of them will be creative types. Some of them will not be creative types. In this case, today, my first, it will be a creative type. I was really interested in how Paul de Jong was spending his pandemic. Paul is a cellist, a musician, an artist, and he used to be part of a band called The Books. Now, The Books broke up in 2011, but their reputation continues on. They're hard to describe. They were described as a pop collage band, but I don't know if that really means anything to anybody, me just saying that. So here's a snippet of the type of music The Books did.
You may call me brother now.
Yes, brother, I know.
He is 42, 5 feet 8 inches tall, normally wears his curly hair long. He has a ruddy complexion, broad shoulders, and is barrel-chested, is unusually strong. He frequently wears a full beard and sometimes glasses. He is a college graduate, a talented artist, and sculptor. Now, Maps is a soft-spoken loner who resents society and all organizations.
I don't know, does that give you an idea? I think it should give you a good idea. Since 2011, Paul has been working on his own music. He's released 2 solo albums. He's done some live performances, and sometimes that includes his video work. His first album was called If. His second was called You Fucking Sucker, which got him in some trouble with UPS. Good for him. Paul has 2 new recordings out currently. One is called Spiral, and it's a full album of just him and his cello. It's very experimental and rather than me try to make it come alive for you through my sad, limited words. I'll play a snippet for you. You can hear it for yourself. I think you understand now. Paul also has a single and video out for a song called This Flower Will Fade and Die. And let me play a snippet of that for you as well.
Rivers don't weep. Bridges don't cry. Friendless sleep. And then we die. Apathy and cruelty. What I do unto thee, you'll do unto me.
So I started the conversation by asking Paul where he was when the pandemic started, not where he physically was, but where he was creatively, professionally, how he was looking forward, and what he expected out of the coming year.
I'm sufficiently self-involved to not care too much about the outside world all the time. I mean, I care, but it's not day in, day out a full commitment to, sometimes I'm just like happy to kind of live in my my shell for a while, just because I kind of not necessarily for my mental sanity, but just to get some things done that kind of need longer arcs of focus and concentration. So I do remember that on February 28th, I had a dear friend from Paris, a Dutchman from Paris, a colleague artist, come in through Canada and taken the Amtrak down to visit us, and he ended up getting, well, so to say, stuck with us until he finally was able to catch a flight back to Amsterdam on May 6th.
Wow.
So he stayed for several months, and so I remember him coming in like under the wire, so to say, and because the next day I think we realized like this is for real and this lockdown is going to happen. Other than that, my wife's younger sister came on February 29th and also ended up staying for about like 2.5 months. So there were 4 adults and 3 children in our house, which,
Yeah.
And once we decided to lock down, I think pretty much the first ones on our block, although there are, of course, people we never see, they might be in permanent lockdown, already, for years or, so who knows. Once we were in lockdown, we were very strict about it, and we kind of slammed the door, and I quickly took up, different ways, I suppose, of keeping in touch with friends and family, my artist friends, so to say. There was no profound change in their routine, nor was there in mine. My musical colleagues, however, I would say about 90% of them went into a sort of social media frenzy where they, especially the performers, because they did see, their primary activity evaporate very, very quickly. So there are really enormous benefits to being completely unknown and very unsuccessful, because you just have so much less to lose.
So, were you able to translate that wonderful status just into a kind of strange normal? You just got to continue what you were already doing for the most part?
I always live in a strange normal. I mean, of course, it's not just a joke, and it's a little bit more complicated than that, but there is much truth in that. I think that as artists and writers and creators, and we have chosen a discipline in our lives where we are, where one of our pivotal skills in our profession is to rely on our self motivation. So I think that I found out that in times of stress, we can actually rely on that very well, and we're actually quite well equipped to mentally deal with these kind of imposed situations, because what we do is we impose all kinds of things onto ourselves to get things done, because nobody else will impose that onto us. So I think, in a way, I, I I felt very ready for this. Um, that might sound strange, but it's not that I welcomed it, but it didn't threw me off in a way that I felt like my career or my life is over, and um, you know into a stressful situation that I felt I couldn't handle.
Mm.
Um, which also, of course, has to do with the fact that, as a parent, I of young children, I have a responsibility to not freak out over anything. I mean, you need to
Mm.
protect your children and to guide them through, through something like this, whether it's their own illnesses or somebody else's or the world's ills, in a mature manner.
Right. And lend maybe some, I guess, some sense of normalcy, at least within the house, to some degree, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think that from birth I have trained them to see like entirely abnormal things as normalcy. So, um, which is, within the framework of common sense and reason. So, and I think that probably for my daughter, it's been the most difficult, as she was in a very, for her, extremely enjoyable routine of going to school every day and seeing her friends every day, and really committed to school. I have absolutely no idea where she got that from, but she's her own person now, 12 years old. So, and so that was a rather radical, but she showed a amazing adaptability.
And it's kind of par for the course for younger people. They have in the 21st century, I guess, they have a kind of a series of um, events that to our age are unprecedented. So they kind of have to learn to adapt really quickly, much more than our generation did, because things were mostly the same, at least in America. Things didn't change that much for um, the span of my life till the 21st century.
Of course, I mean, I'm sure that many of our generation and of our age during these past 6 months have realized what an unprecedented stretch of free choice we have enjoyed in our lives. I
Definitely.
mean, you'd almost say, have we taken free choice for granted? Well, we'll find out, because we might lose it pretty soon. But it is, I'm from parents who both lived through the Second World War, and in many respects, in also at like the absolute gotten the short end of things there. Um, my mother was 10 when the Second World War started. My father was 14, and although I don't talk about that to my children all the time, I did several times, also before we were dealing with the pandemic, um, explain to them that you know, especially during these past months, I told them, like, well, look, in 1942, your grandparents weren't like, oh, look, it's 1942. It's only 3 more years to go, and it'll be 1945, and it'll be all over. You know, it's that's not, the kind of times they lived in. That might have been, that was for them the new normal, and it might never be over. It might get worse, but they were not counting on things getting better or being over at all. So I, you know, very, generalistically, you got to make the best of it while you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'm trying to support my kids in, and encourage my kids in making the best of it, and they're doing a fantastic job.
And it seems to me that maybe your your personal way of making the best of it, I'm segueing into your projects, was you had projects going into the pandemic
Hmm.
that you were already working on. And I'm assuming that that may have given you some um, openings to maybe plow ahead on them, concentrate more.
No, I mean,
No.
not well. I mean, that's yes, I suppose. Also, so there are two answers. But I'll expand to a third one. Let me think. Yeah, I'm in the middle of it's the whole thing is a project. So yes, I'm in the middle of making new things, and been thinking of starting a new album, and I've been writing lyrics for the past year or a year and a half, and that kind of all centers around life's reflections upon death and upon dependencies. It's something that I'm that subject matter that I'm interested in investigating and then somehow making to an album, believe it or not. And so I think that the thing that happened to me during the pandemic is the confrontation that events can follow each other up at such a fast pace that what I create one day might have lost all its relevance the next. And it makes me sometimes even feel ashamed over like missing my own ignorance, probably while being too busy being scandalized by the ignorance of others. It's so lots of things, of course, happened and happen all the time, and the the full blown kleptocracy, Black Lives Matter, and these are, of course, things that here comes the shame. Is these are, of course, things that have been on for so long, and it's. I'm stunned by how outrage in our corner of society is being treated as some kind of novelty, whereas I think I've been infuriated since like my teens, and I've never found a reason to stop since. So not much has changed there. So but since so many other people who I kind of count amongst my audience, so to say, people who give me the benefit of the doubt, so to say, lend me their ear, are these subjects are becoming more central. These social subjects are becoming more central to their lives. I'm having to reconsider or consider the relevance of my work and see whether my cocoon still has like any relation to the outside world. Luckily, I think it does.
Right.
So I'm not worried, and I'm not trying to cater. I don't think I ever have, but I am stripping it from its irrelevancies. Let me put it that way. And then there's still plenty left there. So yeah, it forces me to reconsider. Then there is some logistic considerations, but one of the aspects of the new work that I'm embarked on is that it's not just an album; it's actually a set of videos, and it's although. I work with a microscopic crew that's really easy to actually do these things distanced. I'm not comfortable myself with traveling to any other places than, basically to the front door and around the block. And some of my subjects that I want to work with are in different states, for instance, and so I'm trying to and my cameraman is in Brooklyn. So I've kind of put these things off for the time being. And again, to come back to what I'm telling my children about their grandparents, I've been raised to be in it for the long haul. So I'm staying put. And that doesn't mean that I'm not staying alert. But I'm staying put to protect the health of my household, and I'll do that as long as it takes.
And the project you were just talking about, I imagine that this flower will fade and die that's that project that's part of,
Correct.
correct?
Yeah, that's
And that's a beautiful, beautiful piece of music and recitation and video. I'm curious, when did all that get made? I
about a year ago.
Okay, so you did the shooting a year ago.
Yeah, last summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's basically the project you're kind of
Right.
having
So
to, yeah.
yeah, that's I'm not shelving it, and actually I'm just writing more segments now, and I'm about to make a move to actually shoot 2 more segments that I can set up in a completely safe manner.
Hmm.
The thing is that the idea is to make about like 9 or 10 portraits, that can be of individuals, it can be of couples, of even like little bands of people, to be determined, but these portraits represent a particular decade through in a like human lifespan, a human lifetime.
Hmm.
So the first segment that I finished, uh, very opportunistically, I started at the end because my friend is 98, and so you better get cracking on that one. And so I worked my way back a little bit. I have written a text for and recorded a text with a 90-year-old man from upstate New York. And so I now need to kind of cut those recordings to a good rendition of the spoken text, and then see if I can frame that in music, and then take that into a video shoot and make the portrait once the music and the text is done. So that's right now, that's my approach, at least with those segments. That can really change over the course of the project. So we decided, my record label and I, Temporary Residence, and I decided, well, it's going to be a while before this gets completed, and who knows how it gets completed, whether it can be seen in an auditorium or ever, or whether it's something that just happens online. So we decided, like, we're just going to release the segments as they're ready.
Hmm.
And I kind of like that because it is in some way a natural adaptation to the situation that we find ourselves in, that people spend much time on screens, on the internet, communicating, working, entertaining themselves, reading the news, you name it. Lots of it that would otherwise happen in other physical situations, happen now digitally. So it's not entirely unheard of that people's attention spans are fraught. Let me put it that way. So to actually put out short works that in a way can connect to other works later, but in itself they are self-contained, is fine by me, and it works well for me. Actually, in a way, kind of better than an entire movie right now.
So your plan is, if I remember you correctly, is you're going to release something on Bandcamp monthly.
Well, that's a whole other thing, yeah. So there is a little bit of um, the project that contains This Flower Will Fade and Die is really something that I do dedicated um, to to working with my record label and it's let me put it this way, it's a work that has a greater arch
Mm-hmm.
In every aspect, musical, literary, visual. It has a greater arch than like these monthly releases, so to say. Um, uh, uh, I have just an enormous back catalog of stuff, and some of it is just really kind of, it only needs a little editing, and then it's actually uh, fun as even as a backstory to my records, or to the records of my band even. um,
Mm-hmm.
so I still kind of vaguely anachronistic live in the idea that one makes albums too, so but it's mostly, I notice that in a time where I have not that much intellectual stimulus from direct contact with my friends and colleagues or family,
Mm-hmm.
the even I, and I know myself to go pretty long way on my own. Even I feel the my self motivation being under siege, so to say. I So I noticed that I then I'm still able to produce as I always do and daily do, but things will get shorter. Things will get smaller. I will work. I will sketch anytime. I will make short form works. I will write shorter poetry. I will make short videos. All that. But to make a piece that has a greater arch, um, say a cycle of texts that relate to each other, um, a musical album that's no matter how abstract it tells has a narrative of its own, that becomes more difficult. So I have these things going on at the same time. So I see my monthly releases more as some kind of short form work, and Love Me Alone, this flower will fade and die, as a work that has just greater arch. I'm not saying that it has necessarily more meaning. It's just a sort of investigation that takes more than a day.
Yes. Well, I found during this period that it helps to have multi levels of projects where you have um, ones that you get more immediate gratification from doing, and then you have your continuing efforts that you can dive in a little deeper. And I find they sort of play off each other, make each other bearable, and just keep you going.
Yeah, I mean, I still, often kind of live under the infantile notion that everything just should happen by itself in my work, and I shouldn't really have to do anything at all. So it's really nice if you give yourself playtime, so to say, and doodle time, and I just have to seduce myself into, you know, um, profound distraction. But I'm not the kind of guy who says like, "Oh, great! Now finally I have time for everything." You know, I've always time for everything. I've always had time for everything. So that's no pandemic can change.
Thanks to my guest, Paul de Jong. You can purchase his music and see his videos at pauldejong.bandcamp.com. They'll also keep you busy as the pandemic rages on. The music for How I Spent My Pandemic is performed by The Mighty Atom. Check them out at destroythemightyatom.bandcamp.com. And I'm John 7. Go to your nearest web browser and type in john7.me for more info, or just ask Alexa or Siri or whichever artificially intelligent virtual assistant you have spying on your personal life to find me for you. I'll see you later.